There's a power in those words. Tell them I've changed now, and not in a way that needs their applause, not in a way that's begging for their acknowledgement, but in a way that says, the person you once knew, they're gone. The version you took for granted, the one who tolerated, compromised, and stayed silent, that person has been replaced by someone who knows their worth. Change doesn't happen overnight. It happens in the quiet moments, in the tears no one saw, in the nights you replayed the past and decided you'd never let yourself be treated like that again. It happens in those tiny choices where you start choosing yourself instead of the approval of people who never truly saw you. You don't need to prove your change by words alone. Your life will speak it for you. But for those who still cling to the version of you that exists in their memory, let this be a gentle, or not so gentle, reminder that chapter is closed. People have a funny way of making your growth about them. They notice you've stopped showing up the way you used to. You've stopped agreeing just to keep the peace. You've stopped playing small so they can feel big, and suddenly you're different in their eyes. You'll hear it in their tone, in the way they look at you, in the offhand comments like, "You've changed," and they mean it like it's something to be ashamed of, but the truth, they're right, you have changed. You've fought too many battles, cried too many tears, and survived too many storms to still be the same person you were before. You've bled for this change, you've sacrificed for it, you've earned it. And you don't owe a single person an apology for becoming someone new. It's strange, isn't it, how people expect you to stay the same forever, as if growth is some kind of betrayal, as if the person you were when they first met you is the only version they're entitled to. They don't see the nights you lay awake, replaying every moment where you gave too much of yourself to people who didn't value it. They don't see how much of your spirit you had to break apart just to rebuild into something stronger. They don't see the countless little moments where you chose to stop doing what made others happy and start doing what was right for you. And they certainly don't see the heavy price you paid for this peace you now protect. When people say you've changed, what they often mean is that you've stopped serving them in the way you used to. Maybe you don't answer every text immediately. Maybe you say no to plans that drain your energy. Maybe you refuse to engage in the same old toxic cycles you used to tolerate, and because your boundaries are new to them, they mistake them for coldness. They mistake your silence for arrogance. They mistake your self-respect for ego. But here's the truth they'll never admit out loud. The old you was more convenient. You said yes even when you wanted to say no. You bit your tongue to avoid conflict. You gave the benefit of the doubt to people who didn't deserve it. You let your own needs slide to the bottom of the list just to make sure everyone else was comfortable. And they loved that version of you not because it was better, but because it was easier for them. But growth isn't meant to be convenient for others. It's meant to be liberating for you, and you can't hold yourself back just to keep other people comfortable. The person you are now, the one who knows their worth, who trusts their instincts, who refuses to accept less than they deserve, didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of lessons, from every time you said yes when you should have said no, from every moment you lowered your standards out of fear of being alone, from every single time you swallowed your truth because you didn't want to upset someone who wouldn't have cared enough to listen anyway. You reached a point where you realized that keeping everyone happy was costing you your own happiness, and you decided the price was too high. The thing is, you're not here to play the role people wrote for you when they first met you. You're not here to keep performing as the same version of yourself that fits their narrative. You're here to evolve, and evolving means letting go of people, places, and habits that don't align with who you're becoming. It means risking being misunderstood. It means standing in rooms where people whisper that you've changed and smiling because you know that's the point. There's something incredibly freeing about realizing you don't have to explain your growth to anyone. You don't have to justify your boundaries. You don't have to present a detailed report of why you no longer tolerate certain behaviors. You can simply live your life in alignment with your values and let the people who truly love you adjust to the new version of you, or leave. Because the people who are meant for you will celebrate your change. They will admire your courage. They will understand that the only people threatened by your evolution are the ones who benefited from your lack of it. It's easy to romanticize the past, especially when people try to remind you of the good old days. They'll say, remember when you used to be more fun, more easygoing, more forgiving, and maybe there's a part of you that does remember. But you also remember the cost. You remember how more forgiving meant you let people walk all over you. You remember how more easygoing meant you had no boundaries. You remember how more fun meant you were exhausting yourself trying to be likable. The old you wasn't happier. The old you was tired, drained, and quietly aching for someone, anyone, to give you the permission to put yourself first. But the truth is, no one can give you that permission but you. And so you did. You changed. You became someone who no longer apologizes for wanting more. You became someone who no longer fears being called selfish for practicing self-care. You became someone who doesn't need to beg to be chosen because you've learned to choose yourself. And yes, it scared some people, it confused some people, it even angered some people, but none of that is your problem. Your job is not to be palatable to everyone. Your job is to be authentic to yourself. Some will accuse you of being difficult now. They'll say you've got an attitude. They'll paint you as the problem because you no longer enable their behavior. But that's just noise. The truth is, the people who once found you easy to be around, found you easy to take advantage of. And now that they can't, they call it change, but you know better. You know it's growth, you know it's healing, you know it's finally honoring the parts of you that you once silenced. When someone says you've changed, smile. Say thank you, let them know it's intentional. You've worked too hard to go back. You've fought too hard to be this version of yourself. You've walked through too much fire to step back into the person you used to be just to make someone else feel comfortable. And if they miss the old you, that's okay. That version of you was never meant to last forever. That version of you was a stepping stone, not a destination. Change is a sign of life. Anything that doesn't change is either stagnant or dead. And you are neither. You are growing, breathing, evolving. You are learning that it's not your responsibility to be the same person for someone else's convenience. You are allowed to rewrite your story as many times as you need to until it feels like yours again. You are allowed to set boundaries and not explain them. You are allowed to outgrow relationships, jobs, and versions of yourself that no longer serve you. And you are allowed to do all of this without guilt. Because the truth is, the only people who will ever resent your growth are the ones who never wanted you to have it. They preferred the version of you who didn't see your own value because that version was easier to manipulate. And now that you see yourself clearly, you're no longer playing their game, and that terrifies them. It forces them to confront the fact that the only power they had over you was the power you gave them. And you're not giving it anymore. So no, you don't owe anyone an apology for growing. You don't need to soften your change to make it easier to accept. You don't have to be less just so someone else can feel like more. You've spent enough of your life catering to other people's comfort. Now it's time to live in a way that's true to you, even if it makes others uncomfortable, because at the end of the day, the only person you have to live with is yourself. And as long as you can look in the mirror and love who you see now, that's all that matters. They'll get used to the new you, or they'll move on. Either way, you'll be fine, because you're not living for their approval anymore. You're living for your peace, your joy, your future, and that's a change worth keeping, no matter who doesn't like it. Pain changes you in ways comfort never could. It shapes you, sharpens you, strips away the illusions you once held about people, about love, about life. And the truth is, the person you were before the pain can't survive the person you're meant to become after it. You don't grow like this by reading about it or hearing someone else's advice. You grow by walking through it yourself. You grow by bleeding in places no one can see. You grow by facing the nights that feel endless, the moments that break you so completely you wonder if there's even a way back. And in those moments you learn. You learn things you couldn't have learned any other way. When you've been hurt deeply, you start to see the world differently. You stop romanticizing people who only ever gave you the bare minimum. You stop pretending that red flags are just quirks or misunderstandings. You stop believing that love is supposed to hurt in order to be real. Pain has a way of pulling you out of the dream and forcing you into reality. It's harsh, it's unkind. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just arrives, uninvited, and stays longer than you ever wanted it to. And while you curse it at first, one day you realize it was building you into someone you needed to be. The heartbreaks, the betrayals, the rejections, they weren't just random misfortunes, they were teachers. Harsh, relentless teachers. They taught you to stop relying on the promises people make when they're comfortable, because those promises mean nothing when times get hard. They taught you to stop begging for love from people who are only willing to give it when it's convenient for them. They taught you that not everyone who says they care actually does, and that sometimes people care in ways that still aren't enough for what you deserve. And here's the thing. When you learn from pain, the lesson sticks. Because it wasn't a chapter you read in a book. It was written into your skin, etched into your memories, carried in your bones. You don't forget what it felt like to cry yourself to sleep because someone you trusted broke you. You don't forget the moment you realized you were sitting in a room full of people and still felt alone. You don't forget the way your heart physically ached when you realized someone you would have done anything for would never have done the same for you. That kind of pain is unforgettable, and because it's unforgettable, you build your future differently. You learn to protect your energy. You learn to listen more closely to your instincts. You learn to pay attention to the way people make you feel, not just the words they say. Pain teaches you boundaries in a way no gentle lesson could. Before, maybe you tolerated too much. Maybe you believed that loyalty meant sticking around no matter how much it hurt you. Maybe you thought love was proven by how much you could endure. But after pain, you understand that loyalty without reciprocity is self-destruction. You understand that love without respect is just attachment in disguise. You understand that endurance is not the same as happiness. One of the cruelest yet most powerful lessons pain teaches you is that not everyone you lose is a loss. Some people are removed from your life so you can finally breathe without their weight on your chest. Some people's absence feels like healing disguised as heartbreak, but you can't see it at first. At first, all you feel is the emptiness, and in that emptiness, you think you've lost something irreplaceable. It's only later, when you start to feel yourself again, that you realize what you lost wasn't love, wasn't safety, wasn't happiness. It was the illusion of those things. Pain has this way of forcing you to meet yourself again. You strip away all the versions of you that were built around keeping other people happy, and you start asking, what do I actually need? What do I actually want? And at first, those answers feel selfish. They feel foreign, because for so long, you weren't taught to prioritize yourself. But the more you practice it, the more you realize that putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's survival. People sometimes wonder why you've changed, why you don't tolerate what you used to. They'll say you're guarded now, they'll say you've built walls, and they're not wrong, but they forget to mention that those walls were built out of necessity, not spite. They were built after you learned, through the hardest lessons, that not everyone deserves access to your heart. Pain didn't turn you into a cold person. It turned you into a careful person, and there's a difference. There comes a moment after deep pain when you realize you're no longer looking for people to fix it. You're fixing it yourself. You stop expecting apologies that will never come. You stop trying to change people who don't want to change. You stop living in the hope that someone will suddenly see your worth if you just keep proving it to them. You reclaim your energy, you reclaim your time, and most importantly, you reclaim your self-worth. One of the most beautiful parts of learning from pain is how it deepens your self-respect. You stop accepting crumbs because you know you deserve the feast. You stop begging for love because you realize that any love you have to beg for isn't worth having. You stop fearing loneliness because you understand that being alone with your peace is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel small. There's a certain confidence that comes after surviving something that almost broke you. You look back and think, if I made it through that, I can make it through anything. And it's not arrogance, it's resilience. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows they can survive without the people they once thought they couldn't live without. It's the calm certainty that you'll never again hand over the keys to your happiness to someone who doesn't know how to take care of it. Pain changes the way you love too. You start loving with more intention, but also with more caution. You give your heart, but you give it slowly. You trust, but you trust wisely. You understand that vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's shared with people who can hold it with care. And you learn to walk away at the first sign that someone can't. You also start to appreciate the little things more. When you've been through dark seasons, even small moments of peace feel like luxury. A day without anxiety, a conversation that feels safe, a connection that doesn't drain you. These things become treasures, not because they're rare in the world, but because they were rare in your world for so long. The truth is, pain is a gift you never wanted, but it's a gift nonetheless. It gives you clarity, it gives you perspective. It gives you the ability to recognize love when it's real, and the courage to walk away when it's not. It turns you into someone who's harder to fool, harder to manipulate, harder to break, and while some people might miss the version of you that was easier to take advantage of, you don't. You know better now. You carry the lessons with you, but you don't carry the bitterness. That's the final stage of growth. When you can look back at what hurt you without wishing it away, not because you enjoyed it, but because you can see what it made you into. You see the strength in your own reflection. You see the wisdom in your own words. You see the boundaries you once thought you could never set, and you realize they're the very things keeping you safe now. Pain taught you all of that, and for that reason, you've changed. Not because you wanted to, but because you had to, and you'll never go back. At some point in life, you realize your energy is not this endless, bottomless resource you can hand out to everyone who asks for it. You start to notice how drained you feel after certain conversations, how heavy you feel after certain interactions, how even the thought of seeing certain people makes your chest tighten. And you start asking yourself a question you never used to. Why am I giving my time, my attention, my care to people who don't value it? That's when it hits you. Your energy is a currency. It's as valuable, if not more valuable, than money. You wouldn't hand out your paycheck to just anyone who asked, so why have you been handing out your emotional and mental energy like it's free? There's a shift that happens when you've been through enough to understand your own worth. The old you might have said yes to everyone. You might have agreed to plans you didn't want to go to. You might have listened to someone's endless problems even when they never once asked how you were doing. You might have stayed in relationships, romantic or otherwise, where your presence was taken for granted. But when you change, when you truly value yourself, you start guarding your energy like it's something sacred. Because it is. The truth is, your energy shapes your life. Where you spend it determines what grows. If you spend it constantly rescuing people who refuse to rescue themselves, you'll find yourself exhausted and empty. If you invest it in environments that are negative or toxic, you'll carry that heaviness with you everywhere. But when you put your energy into people and situations that are nourishing, your whole life starts to shift. You start to feel lighter, you start to feel inspired again, you start to feel alive. It's not about cutting people off to be cold. It's about recognizing that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Some people only show up when they need something. Some people drain you without even realizing it, because they've gotten so used to you being the one who always gives, always listens, always fixes. And the problem is, the more you give without limits, the more people expect it. They won't see it as generosity anymore. They'll see it as a duty you owe them, and that's where resentment grows. That's where you lose yourself in trying to be everything to everyone. When you finally wake up to the truth, it changes everything. You stop chasing people who walk away. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving your energy to situations that don't lead to growth. And at first it feels strange. It feels unnatural, because you've spent so long pouring into everyone else that keeping something for yourself feels selfish. But over time, you realize it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself and even for others. Because the version of you that is rested, grounded, and at peace is far more capable of loving in a healthy way than the version of you that is drained and depleted. Protecting your energy means you start making different choices. You leave conversations when they become toxic. You decline invitations that don't excite you. You step back from relationships that only take without giving. You spend more time alone, not because you dislike people, but because solitude recharges you in ways constant interaction never could. You learn to love your own company so much that you're no longer afraid to lose people. And here's the beautiful thing. When you stop scattering your energy everywhere, the people who are meant to be in your life will feel the difference. They will value you more because they know your time isn't something you give out carelessly. They will appreciate your presence because it's not something they can take for granted. And the ones who only came for what they could take from you, they'll fade away. It will hurt at first, but in time you'll see it as a blessing, because every person who leaves makes space for someone better to arrive. There's also a deeper truth. Your energy affects the quality of the love you attract. If you're constantly depleted, you'll end up in relationships that mirror that exhaustion, connections that take more than they give. But when you're protecting your energy, you radiate a different kind of presence. You're not operating from desperation anymore. You're not trying to earn someone's love by proving how much you can give. Instead, you're letting people meet you at the level you meet yourself, and the ones who can't, they simply don't stay. This shift also changes how you handle conflict. The old you might have argued endlessly, trying to make someone see your point of view. You might have wasted hours defending yourself against false narratives. But when you value your energy, you realize not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes walking away is the win. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any explanation. And when you choose peace over proving a point, you're not losing. You're winning in ways they may never understand. It's also worth saying that protecting your energy doesn't mean building walls so high no one can reach you. It's not about being closed off. It's about being intentional. It's about letting people in slowly, letting them earn your trust, letting them show you they can handle the responsibility of your presence. Because that's what it is, a responsibility. To have access to your heart, your mind, your time is a privilege. And you can't give that privilege to just anyone. There will be people who don't like this version of you. They'll call you distant. They'll say you've become too busy or too different. But those same people never complained when you were overextending yourself for them. They never had a problem when your energy was theirs for the taking. It's only now, when they're no longer at the center of it, that they suddenly feel like something's wrong. But you can't go back to being that person just to make them comfortable. The truth is, you're not obligated to be available to everyone all the time. You're not a resource for people to drain whenever they please. You are a human being with limits, with needs, with dreams of your own. And every time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to something that does. Every time you protect your energy, you're creating space for the right things, the right people, the right opportunities to enter your life. And maybe that's the biggest change of all. You stop living in reaction to other people's needs and start living in alignment with your own. You stop asking, what will they think if I say no, and start asking, what will it cost me if I say yes? You stop fearing that protecting your energy will make you lose people, because you understand that anyone you lose for that reason was never really for you to begin with. Your energy is your life. Where you put it determines the kind of life you live. And once you understand that, you stop spending it recklessly, you invest it wisely, you put it into relationships that fill you back up, you put it into passions that make you come alive, you put it into yourself, into your healing, your growth, your joy. And when you do that, you don't just change your relationships, you change your entire world. There comes a point when you realize that proving yourself to people who underestimated you is a waste of your life. You stop needing them to admit they were wrong. You stop replaying conversations in your head where you finally say all the things you wish you had said. You stop wishing for the day they'll come back and apologize. And instead, you start living in a way that makes their opinions irrelevant. Because the best revenge isn't a speech. It isn't getting the last word. The best revenge is living so fully, so unapologetically, so beautifully that the people who doubted you have no choice but to notice, even if they'll never say it out loud. You've already learned that energy is currency. And so is attention. Every time you focus on proving yourself to someone, you're giving them a form of power. You're letting them influence your choices. You're letting their doubt direct your path. But when you decide you're done trying to make them see, you take that power back. You stop living to be seen and you start living to be fulfilled. That's when your life begins to truly change. The truth is, people rarely admit when they've misjudged you. They might watch your growth in silence, but their pride keeps them from saying, I was wrong about you. And waiting for that moment will only keep you stuck. You can't heal if you're constantly looking over your shoulder for validation. Healing happens when you stop needing their acknowledgement and start focusing on what makes you feel alive again. And here's the thing, when you begin to pour your energy into your own growth instead of into proving your worth, your life naturally becomes the evidence. People can ignore your words, they can dismiss your feelings, but they can't argue with results. They can't argue with the peace in your eyes, the confidence in your voice, the way you carry yourself now. They can't argue with the fact that you are no longer the person they could walk over, and whether they ever say it or not, they'll notice. Living well doesn't mean your life is suddenly perfect. It doesn't mean you won't still have bad days or moments of doubt. It means that despite the pain, despite the losses, despite the times you felt like giving up, you kept going. You chose to build something beautiful from the ruins. You chose to create joy in spaces that used to be filled with hurt. You chose to see your own value when others refused to. That choice, day after day, is the greatest form of power you have. There's something deeply satisfying about knowing that your transformation is happening in plain sight, without you needing to announce it. The same people who once thought you'd never recover, never move on, never succeed, end up watching you do exactly that. Not because you set out to show them, but because you set out to show yourself. And when you focus on showing yourself, you raise your standards, your habits, your life. It's not about spite, it's about freedom. If you're still living to prove something to someone, they still own a piece of you. But when you let go of that need, you're free to live entirely on your own terms. You stop performing for an audience that doesn't even deserve front row seats. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to win over those who have already decided who you are in their minds. Instead, you put that energy into building a life so rich in meaning that their opinions become background noise. And here's the beautiful irony. The moment you stop caring about proving them wrong is often the exact moment you do. Because when you're no longer distracted by their doubts, you can fully focus on your growth. You can take risks without worrying about what they'll say if you fail. You can try new things, chase new dreams, build new relationships, all without the shadow of their judgment hanging over you. That's when you create results so undeniable that even your silence becomes a statement. Living well doesn't mean flaunting your wins in their face. It means not even thinking about them when you win. It means celebrating in your own heart with the people who truly matter. It means doing things because you want to, not because you want to be seen doing them. It means being so busy loving your life that you forget to check if they're watching. And yes, some of them will watch. They'll watch quietly, pretending not to notice. They'll scroll past your successes without liking, without commenting. But deep down, they'll feel it. They'll see the light in you that wasn't there before. They'll see the way your life has shifted, and that's enough. You don't need the applause. You don't need the acknowledgement. You don't need their validation, because you've learned to validate yourself. Living well also means you stop holding on to bitterness. You stop replaying old wounds. You stop letting the past dictate how much joy you're allowed to have in the present. Because if you're still living in reaction to the hurt still wins. But when you release it, when you stop letting it control you, you take back the narrative. You choose to define your life by where you're going, not by where you've been. And that choice changes everything. It also means you start setting your own measures of success. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop letting society tell you what making it looks like. You decide for yourself what happiness means, what success feels like, what love should be. And when you live by your own definitions, you stop being swayed by outside opinions. You can stand in your truth even if no one else understands it. One day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up and notice how far you've come. You'll notice how peaceful your mornings feel, how light your heart is, how much easier it is to breathe now. You'll notice that the things that once broke you don't have the same power anymore. You'll notice that you laugh more easily, that you smile without forcing it, that you dream bigger without fear, and in that moment you'll realize you already won. Not because they admitted they were wrong, not because you got the last word, but because you built a life where their opinion no longer matters. This is the quiet victory that comes from living well. It's not loud, but it's powerful. It's not flashy, but it's undeniable. It's the kind of victory that lasts because it's built on self-respect, not on revenge, and the people who once doubted you, they'll see it. Even if they pretend they don't, they'll feel it, and you'll smile not because you beat them, but because you no longer needed to. That's the real change. That's the moment you know you've evolved, when your happiness no longer depends on their recognition, when your peace no longer depends on their understanding, when your worth no longer depends on their approval. That's when you can truly say, tell them I've changed now, and mean it, not as a challenge, but as a simple truth, because the life you're living is proof enough.